Joining us right now is Fox News military analyst, General Jack Keane. General, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Maria.
Your reaction?
Well, a very decisive act within 48 hours of that horrific scene we saw on television with the sarin gas and the children and the families. This president has acted out of a humanitarian need, standing up for the moral underpinning of the United States and the world at large, that we're not going to underwrite a dictator, a thug, and a killer using weapons of mass destruction. We're not going to put up with that kind of behavior. This is a proportionate, limited attack designed for one thing only: to change Assad's behavior so he stops using chemical weapons.
Yeah, obviously the use of a Tomahawk missile, 59 missiles were launched. Let's talk about the reason for that. This is an unmanned missile, obviously precision as well.
Oh yeah, very, very effective. 98% probability of kill within about 5 meters. These weapons hit what they're shooting at. We didn't go to the other 5 airfields where the rest of Assad's air power infrastructure is at. That's why I'm saying is proportionate attack. Certainly there's room to do that based on Assad's reaction to this. I think the geopolitical implications of it far exceed the military impact. And by that I mean President Trump has spent the first 70-plus days in office reassuring his allies that American leadership has returned to face the global security challenges facing not only us, but our allies. He's done that in the Far East, he's done it in Europe, and he's done it with the Middle Eastern leaders. And now he's taking decisive action. I think that absolutely reassures our allies, our adversaries, Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, all paying attention here. And certainly it's going to have some impact on them as well. We have been doing the opposite. As we know, Maria, we've talked so many times about our inability to act and protect U.S. interests and those of our allies. Now we have a president has taken that action, and I think it's got some upside implications for the United States and also for our allies.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because we have not seen a response from Russia. We know that Russia has been aligning itself with the Assad regime. What do you think Russia does here, and what are our military options going forward? Well,
Russia's got a couple of options. First of all, we have to hold Russia accountable for not getting rid of the chemical weapons, which was the agreement that we cast with them in 2013. They were all supposed to be gone by 2014. Obviously, Russia didn't do that. Obviously, Assad didn't do that. We all said that probably would not happen, and we have evidence of that, obviously, now. Secondly, Russia is still in a pretty good position. They have propped up the Assad regime in Syria. The Iranians are on the ground in a very robust way. The regime is no longer being threatened as it was back in 2015 when Russia came in with its air power to sustain the regime. Secondly, it's possible that that Putin would be willing to give up Assad, given world opinion, particularly if Assad does anything more along these lines. But they will never give up the Alawite regime infrastructure. In other words, we will trade one thug for another thug. And there's nothing in Syria that is simple or easy, Maria. The jihadists are the dominant opposition force in Syria today, far exceeding the capability of the Syrian moderates, who the Russians crushed almost immediately when they started their air campaigns, and we did nothing about that. In other words, we had a surrogate on the ground, and they were crushing them, and we did nothing other than rhetoric to tell them to stop bombing the Syrian moderates. So Russia is still very much in the driver's seat here. Now, they can concede at some point Assad and give him up, but they would want some pretty sizable concessions. They would want sanctions removed, recognizing the annexation of Crimea and what they're doing in eastern Ukraine. He's a tough negotiator, and we'll see where we go in terms of the diplomatic effort with Russia from here on out.
So you're saying maybe there's leverage here for Russia. Maybe they say, look, you know, we won't see consequences here, but we want our own sanctions lifted. I mean, look, we know that Russia is aligning itself and has with Syria. The one thing we've heard from Russia last night, as soon as the strikes were announced, Russia warns U.S. strike against Syria would have consequences. So I guess what I'm asking is really, what response would you expect from Russia at this point?
Well, Russia certainly is not threatening any military response, so I think the fact that they're saying it's going to have consequences on the relationship, certainly it will. But I think it gives us some leverage with the Russians because we have taken some decisive action here. I think anybody thinking that, based on the campaign, that somehow there's going to be some sweetheart relationship between the United States and Russia can put that out of their minds.
Right.
I mean, last week, Rex Tillerson and Jim Mattis both spoke about Russia in terms of its trampling on U.S. interests and that of our allies. And now we have acted to punish a Russian surrogate inside Syria. And first time the government of Syria has ever been attacked by the United States. And that's Russia's allies. So they're going to get that message, to be sure.
Right, and the Secretary of State also said that, pointing to Russia for not removing the chemical weapons in Syria. We have his statement, in fact. He says this: clearly Russia has failed in its responsibility to deliver on that commitment. Either Russia has been complicit or simply incompetent on delivering its end of the agreement. So Tillerson is headed to Moscow next week, General. He's going to be with his Russian counterpart. Do you think America and Russia comes together to fight future chemical weapons attacks on this? How does that meeting change now next week? They've both said they want this meeting to take place regardless.
Well, I think the Russians are probably pretty frustrated with Assad. While they enabled Assad, certainly, to kill Syrian people. And remember this, the Russians have committed war crimes in Syria. They've used their penetrator bombs to destroy underground hospitals. That's a war crime. And they have bombed the Syrian people even more effectively than the Assad regime, because the Assad regime's air power is a mere shadow of its former self. The major air power component in Syria is Russian. So they're very much complicit here, although they may not have had a direct hand in this chemical weapons attack. And I think they would certainly tell Assad to knock this off. We don't want any more of this, because all of that does is play against Russia's hand that they hold. Russia still holds most of the cards in Syria. That regime, the Alawite regime for sure, is not going anywhere, propped up by the Iranians and propped up by the Russians.
So what do you look for right now in terms of next step? What's the response that you're focused on?
Well, I think that the Trump team will continue to do what they said they were going to do, and that is they're going to take ISIS down. And I hope that we do that with the participation from the coalition forces, which I'm telling you are revitalized and reinvigorated as a result of the discussions they've had with President Trump and also this action today. They have always wanted to help in Syria, and the Obama administration has pushed back on it. They want to help with ISIS, and they also wanted to help years ago against the regime. Some of those opportunities have been squandered, to be sure, because the facts on the ground have changed. But they're going to go on with ISIS. And I think long term, they'll try to work something out to bring an end to the Syrian civil war.
All right, we'll leave it there. General, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for your insights this morning.
Good talking to you, Maria.
Thank you, sir. General Jack Keane joining us there.